Alright, so today my plan is to talk about some link on Wikipedia that my friend sent me on Skype. And it's very interesting to know about this stuff because I used to have this idea but didn't know any name to call it. And now I do know, and it's very formal indeed. And this is called, let me see, I have to bring it up first. Okay, this is called linguistic relativism, and the formal name for it is the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. I don't know if it's Sapir or Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. And Sapir-Whorf hypothesis postulates that a person's language influences their perceptions and cognitive patterns. That's its main statement. And Stanislav Kozlovsky proposed in the Russian popular scientific magazine Computere that a fluent speaker of Itikui accordingly would think about 5 or 6 times as fast as a speaker of a typical natural language. I also like to make a commentary that Spanish is the fastest language around, to the point that speedrunners set their games to Spanish to gain time and fame. Speedrunners are people who are paid to play games, and in a way that the game is completely achieved as fast as possible. And the rules are often that if you discover any bug that allows you to do that, then you are allowed to use it. That's the most common rule about it. And when they set the game to Spanish, the dialogues become faster and they are more likely to get a world record, right? There's also a sci-fi based on Sapir-Whorf theory, which I just bought for $3. It's called Babel-17. Babel-17, and I'm just going to start reading that article. There it is. The principle of linguistic relativity holds that the structure of a language affects its speaker's worldview or cognition. Popularly known as Sapir-Whorf theory, or hypothesis, or Whorfianism, the principle is often defined to include 2 versions. The strong version says that language determines thought, and that linguistic categories limit and determine cognitive categories. So linguistic categories limit and determine cognitive categories. Whereas the weak version says that a linguistic category and usage only influence thought and decision. Then it tells about a little about its history. It mentions something called linguistic determinism, which I can just mention and give a short brief. Linguistic determinism is the idea that language and its structures limit and determine human knowledge or thought, as well as thought processes such as categorization, memory, and perception. The term implies that people of different languages have different thought processes. Ludwig Wittgenstein expressed the idea Tractatus Lógico-Filosóficos, the limits of my language mean the limits of my world. The subject does not belong to the world, but it's a limit of the world. And about what one cannot speak, one must remain silent. This viewpoint forms part of the field of analytic philosophy. Though it played a considerable role historically, linguistic determinism is now discredited among mainstream linguists for some reason. There's also something called connectionism. Connectionism is a set of approaches in the fields of artificial intelligence, cognitive psychology, cognitive science, neuroscience, and philosophy of mind that models mental or behavioral phenomena as the emergent processes of interconnected networks of simple units. The term was introduced by Donald Hebb in the 1940s. There are many forms of connectionism, but the most common forms use neural network models. Basic principles. The central connectionist principle is that mental phenomena can be described by interconnected networks or simple and often uniform units. The form of the connections in the units can vary from model to model. For example, units in the network could represent neurons and the connections could represent synapses like in the brain of a human being. And then it mentions spreading activation, neural networks, biological realism, learning, tells about its history, parallel distributed processing, connectionism apart from PDP, which is that, connectionism versus computationalism debate. I'm going to read that because it sounds interesting. As connectionists became increasingly popular in the 1980s, some researchers, including Jerry Fodor, Steven Pinker, and others, reacted against it. They argued that connectionism, as the developing, threatened to obliterate what they saw as the progress being made in the fields of cognitive science and psychology by the classical approach of computationalism. I don't like Steven Pinker. Computationalism is a specific form of cognitivism. Cognitivism. It's not explaining what cognitivism is. Oh, maybe it's just the theory of cognition, right? Computationalism is a specific form of cognitivism that argues that mental activity is computational. Wow, man, there's so many retards. Of course it is computational. That is, that the mind operates by performing purely form operations of symbols like a Turing machine. Some researchers argue that the trend in connectionism represented a reversion towards associationism and the abandonment of the idea of language of thought, something they saw as mistaken. In contrast, those very tendencies made connectionism attractive for other researchers. Connectionism and computationalism need not be at odds, but the debate in the 1980s and early 1990s led to the opposition between the two. Throughout the debate, some researchers have argued that connectionism and computationalism are fully compatible, though full consensus on this issue has not been reached. Differences between the two approaches include the following. Computationalists posit symbolic models that are structurally similar to underlying brain structure, whereas connectionists engage in low-level modeling, trying to ensure that their models resemble neurological structures. Computationalists in general focus on the structure of explicit symbols, mental models, and syntactical rules for their internal manipulation, whereas connectionists focus on learning from environmental stimuli and storing this information of formal connections between neurons. Computationalists believe that internal mental activity consists of manipulation of explicit symbols, whereas connectionists believe that the manipulation of explicit symbols provides a poor model of mental activity. Computationalists often posit domain-specific symbolic subsystems designed to support learning in specific areas of cognition, language, intentionality, number. It just says language, intentionality, number. Wow. Whereas connectionists posit one or a small set of very general learning mechanisms. Despite this difference, some theories have proposed that the connectionist architecture is simply that's not computation, that's connectionist architecture. It's simply the manner in which organic brains happen to implement the symbol manipulation system. This is logically possible, as it is well known that connectionist models can implement symbol manipulation systems of the kind used in computationalist models. As indeed, it says citation needed. As indeed they must be able, if they are to explain the human ability to perform symbol manipulation tasks. But the debate rests on whether the symbol manipulation forms the foundation of cognition in general, so this is not a potential vindication of computationalism. Nonetheless, computational descriptions may be helpful high-level descriptions of cognition of logic. Cognition of logic, for example. Ooh, this is new to me. Cognition of logic, all right. The debate largely centered on logical arguments about whether connectionist networks could produce a syntactic structure observing the sort of reason. This was later achieved, that though using processes unlikely to be possible with the brain, thus the debate persisted. As of 2016, progress in neurophysiology and general advances in the understanding of neural networks have led to the successful modeling of a great many of these early problems, and the debate about fundamental cognition has thus largely been decided among neuroscientists in favor of connectionism. However, these fairly recent developments have yet to reach consensus acceptance among those working in other fields, such as psychology or philosophy of mind. Part of the appeal of computational descriptions is that they are relatively easy to interpret and thus may be seen as contributing to our understanding of particular mental processes, whereas connectionist models are in general more opaque, to the extent that they may be describable only in very general terms, such as specifying the learning algorithm, the number of units, etc., or in unhelpfully low-level terms. In this sense, connectionist models may instantiate and thereby provide evidence for a broad theory of cognition, i.e. connectionism, without representing a helpful theory of a particular process that is being modeled. In this sense, the debate might be considered as to some extent reflecting a mere difference in the level of analysis in which particular theories are framed. The recent popularity of dynamical systems in philosophy of mind have added a new perspective on the debate. Some authors now argue that any split between connectionism and computationalism is more conclusively characterized as a split between computationalism and dynamical systems. Alright, so I have to click on dynamical systems and see what it is. Computationalism and dynamical systems. This is going to be retarded. Dynamical systems. In the traditional computational approach, representations are viewed as static structures of discrete symbols. Cognition takes place by transforming static symbol structures in discrete sequential steps. Sensory information is transformed to symbolic inputs, which produce symbolic outputs that get transformed into motor outputs. The entire system operates in an ongoing cycle. What is missing from this traditional view is that human cognition happens continuously and in real time. Breaking down the processes into discrete time steps may not fully capture this behavior. An alternative approach is to define a system with 1. A state of a system at any given time, 2. A behavior defined as the change over time in overall state, and 3. A state set of state space representing the totality of overall states that system could be in. The system is distinguished by the fact that all of its states belong together, that is, a change in any aspect of the system depends on the other aspects of the system. A typical dynamical model is formalized by several differential equations that describe how the system's state changes over time. By doing so, the form of a space of possible trajectories and internal and external forces that shape a specific trajectory that unfold over time instead of the physical nature of the underlying mechanisms that manifest as mechanisms carry explanatory force. Alright? On this dynamical view, parametric inputs alter the system's intrinsic dynamics rather than specifying an internal state to describe some external state of affairs. And then it mentions associative memory, language acquisition, cognitive development. It mentions something, a classical developmental error, the A not B error, has been investigated in the context of dynamical systems. Context. A not B error, also known as stage 4 error, perseverative error, is a phenomenon uncovered by the work of John Piaget in his theory of cognitive development of children. The A not B error is a particular error made by infants during substage 4 of a sensory motor stage. A typical A not B test goes like this. An experimenter hides an attractive toy under box A within the baby's reach. The baby searches for the toy, looks under box A and finds the toy. This activity is usually repeated several times, always with the researcher hiding the toy under box A. Then, in the critical try, the experimenter moves the toy under box B, also within easy reach of a baby. Babies of 10 months or younger typically make the perseveration error, meaning they look under box A even though they saw the researcher move the toy under box B. And box B is just as easy to reach. This demonstrates a lack or incomplete schema of object permanence. Children of 12 months or older typically do not make this error. Alright. And alright, so that's cognitive development, locomotion, behavioral dynamics, adaptive behaviors, open dynamical systems, embodied cognition. I'm going to read this. In the context of dynamical systems and embodied cognition, representations can be conceptualized as indicators or mediators. In the indicator view, internal states carry information about the existence of an object in the environment where the state where the state of a system during exposure to an object is the representation of that object. On the mediator view, internal states carry information about the environment which is used by the system in obtaining its goals. In this more complex account, the state of the system carries information that mediates between the information the agent takes in from the environment and the force exerted on the environment by the agent's behavior. The application of open dynamical systems have been discussed for 4 types of classical embodied cognition examples. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Why? 1. Instances where the environment and agent must work together to achieve a goal, referred to as intimacy. A classic example of intimacy is the behavior of simple agents working to achieve a goal, e.g. insects traversing the environment. The successful completion of a goal relies fully on the coupling of an agent to the environment. Instance where the use of external artifacts improves the performance of tests, then alright, so it's not well written. Instance where the use of external artifacts improves the performance of tests, then performance without these artifacts. Oh, then it's comparing, alright. Instance where the use of external artifacts improves the performance of tests, then performance without these artifacts, referred to as offloading. A classic example of offloading is the behavior of Scrabble players. Let's see what Scrabble is. And let's see how long this video is. Alright, 15. So again, Scrabble is a word game in which 2 to 4 players score points by placing tiles, each bearing a single letter onto a game board, which is divided into a 15 by 15 grid of squares. The tiles must form words which, in crossword fashion, flow left to right in rows or downwards in columns. The words must be defined in a standard dictionary or present in specified reference works, which provide a list of officially permissible words. The name Scrabble is a trademark of Hasbro Inc. in the United States and Canada, right? Let's see if I find a picture. Oh, that is Scrabble. I know this game. Game details. Let's see. The game is played by 2 to 4 players on a square board with 15 by 15 grid of cells, individually known as squares, each of which accommodates a single letter tile. In official club and tournament games play is between 2 players or occasionally between 2 teams, each of which collaborates on a single rack. The board is marked with premium squares, which multiply the number of points awarded. 8 dark red triple word squares, 17 pink double word squares, and which one, the center square H8 is marked with a star or other symbol. 12 dark blue triple letter squares and 24 light blue double letter squares. In 2008, Hasbro changed the colors of the premium squares to orange for TW, red for DW, blue for DL, and green for TL. Despite this, the original premium square color scheme is still the preferred scheme for Scrabble boards used in tournaments. In English language set, the game contains 100 tiles, 98 of which are marked with a letter and a point value ranging from 1 to 10. The number of points of each lettered tile is based on the letter's frequency in standard English writing. Commonly used letters such as vowels are worth 1 point, while less common letters score higher, with Q and Z each worth 10 points. The game also has 2 blank tiles that are unmarked and carry no point value. The blank tiles can be used as substitutes for any letter once laid on the board. However, the choice is fixed. Other language sets use different letter set distributions with different point values. Tiles are usually made of wood or plastic and are 19 by 19 millimeters, that is 0.17 inches by 0.17 inches square, and 4 millimeters, that is 0.16 inches thick, making them slightly smaller than the squares on the board. Only the rose wood tiles of the deluxe edition varies the width up to 2 millimeters, and that's such a detail, 0.08 inches for different letters. Traveling versions of a game often have smaller tiles, e.g. 17 millimeters by 13 millimeters by 13 millimeters, which is 0.51 inches. Sometimes they are magnetic to keep them in place. The capital letter is printed in black at the center of the tile face, and the lattice point value printed in a smaller font at the bottom right corner. S is one of the most valuable tiles in English language Scrabble because it can be appended to many words to pluralize them, or in the case of most verbs, convert them to fine third-person singular present tense, such as the word laughs. Offered buts included only 4 instances to avoid a game that was too easy. Q is considered the most problematic letter, as most words with it also contain U. A similar problem occurs in other languages like French, Dutch, Italian, and German. J is also difficult to play due to its low frequency and scarcity of words having it at the end. Yeah. C and V may be troublesome in the endgame since no two-letter words with them exist, save for CH and saupods. Wow, never heard of that. Alright, done with this game. Let's go back. Scrabble. Alright, so I was reading number 2 on that list. It's a list of the 4 types of classical embodied cognition examples. And number 2 went like this: instance where the use of external artifacts improves the performance of tests than performance without these artifacts, referred to as offloading. A classic example of offloading is the behavior of Scrabble players. People are able to create more words when playing Scrabble if they have the tiles in front of them and are allowed to physically manipulate their arrangement. In this example, Scrabble tiles allow the agent to upload working memory demands onto the tiles themselves. Nice. So that's the term, to offload working memory demands. Nice. 3. Instance where functionality equivalent external artifact replaces functions that are normally performed internally by the agent, which is a special case of offloading. One famous example is that of humans, specifically the agents Otto and Inga. Navigation in a what? Specifically the agents Otto and Inga. Why are these names here? Alright. One famous example is that of human navigation in a complex environment with or without assistance of an artifact. Instance where there is not a single agent. The individual agent is part of a larger system that contains multiple agents and multiple artifacts. One famous example formulated by E.D. Hutchins on his book Cognition in the Wild is that of navigating a naval ship. Alright? So that's done with cognitive model on dynamical systems. And that's also done with connectionist versus computationalist debate. Alright, so the plan now is to rest a little. Just like a minute. Alright. I also want to read on linguistic determinism because I really think that's related to linguistic relativity, right? Structure of a language. And this seem to be some different schools of thought, even though they sound alike, right? Linguistic relativity and linguistic determinism are similar, and also that dynamical systems and computationalism is also very similar. I didn't spot the difference. I think they are just they're fighting between themselves for the job, right? For I don't know, for the authority, like who gets to determine the theory, the official theory. That's how I see it. So I have to read linguistic determinism because I want to give you this idea that linguistic determinism is related to linguistic relativity. Oh, it's right here. Linguistic determinism is the strong form of linguistic relativity. The strong form, right? Popularly known as the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, which argues that individuals experience the world based on the structure of the language they actually use. For example, studies have shown that people find it easier to recognize and remember shades of colors for which they have a specific name. Another example is the Daniel Everett study analyzed conception of numbers in the Brazilian Pirahan people. These individuals could not conceive numbers beyond 1 and 2 for which there are actual terms in their language. After this, all numbers are grouped under the term many. Even after being taught in the Portuguese language for 8 months, not one individual could count to 10. Alright, I guess that's it. Let's go read that book. $3 worth. So it starts like this. And nowhere in civilization so perfectly mirrored as in speech. If our knowledge of speech or the speech itself is not yet perfect, neither is civilization. So that's a great start. I agree with it. Introduction. Delany was the great prodigy of 1960s SF. His first novel, The Jews of Apter 1962, was published when he was 20. It was followed by The Fall of the Towers trilogy, 1963-65. Those books are a lot of fun. And in 1966, he published his first two masterpieces, Empire Star and Babel-17. Delany was 23 years of age, so he was younger than me. I'm nearly twice as old as that. He was younger than me, Leo, and then the guy here writing the introduction goes on and say, I'm nearly twice as old as that, as I write this, and if I could write a book half as good, I'd be happy indeed. You can actually tell what Babel-17 is that Babel-17 is a young man's book. Not least because it's written with palpable and restless energy, and almost excessive vigor and panache. Characters don't come and go, they whir and burst and dash. She whirled from the bar. He bursts from the basement cafe. Light doesn't fall, it smashes or blisters or is jammed into the corner of their eye. Rather than being tired, hysterical exhaustion froths, but it would be a mistake to dismiss the novel as overwritten, or more precisely, it would be a mistake to think that the overwriting is gaucheness to be overlooked or excused. The over is exactly the part of the fact. A formal counterpoint to the intellectual and conceptual precision with which Delany works through his linguistic conceptual premise. That deliberately jarring symbolist juxtaposition is part of the way the novel works. The melodramatic plotting with its interplanetary war, its futuristic exoticism, its various planetary societies and cultures, battle, treachery, decadence, and intergalactic mystery is gorgeously handled. The form and restness of articulation and intellectual content is of a caliber rare in genre fiction. Alright. Let me just drink a little of the coffee here to get some energy. Yeah, so I had this great idea of mixing caffeine, coffee, and creatine all together into one delicious liquid of a dubious color. Just going to do that right now. I'll be sure to make a video about these things that I take, because they're so cool, man. They really give you the edge, really make you feel good, really make you smart, productive. Like, I haven't eaten anything today. I'm probably a little retarded because of that. But that also conditions my body to be efficient, so it's a good thing. So basically, when I start to eat again, like in 3 hours or something, I'll be like a Ferrari, straight from the factory, fresh and new, with its explosive engine. I think it's a V8 engine. Yeah, it's a great engine. Drinks a lot of fuel, though. I don't know why I'm saying that it's efficient. Alright, so yeah, I'm not going to take more than that. So I had like 50 milligrams of caffeine, vitamins B, and something like vitamins B1, 2, 3, and 12. B1, 2, 3, B6, and 12. Creatine and some coffee. Let's see how that goes. Let's go. Alright, so while I mix that, I can also read it. Where was I? The melodramatic plotting with its interplanetary war, its futuristic exoticism, its various planetary societies and cultures, battle, treachery, decadence, and intergalactic mysteries gorgeously handled. So I read that. But the form and resonance of articulation and intellectual content is of a caliber rare in genre fiction. Yeah, that's where I stop. Rydra Wong, the character at the center of the novel, is a poet. Something true of many of Delaney's early novels, more poetry in its excess and garishness as well as its expressiveness and concision is the idiom of Delaney's prose, where is more than youthful bravado to face the richness of style where here continually foregrounds the medium of the tale. Wow, that's well said. The richness of style here continually foregrounds the medium of the tale. Novels, Delaney is saying, are not made out of ideas, or characters, or stories. Novels are made out of words. And in a novel precisely about language like this one, it's appropriate to foreground the working of language. In Babel-17, not only poetry but words made out of language. The alien language from which the novel takes its name is somehow mysteriously causing damage of vital military ordnance and personnel. This is why the novel is so stylistically frolicsome, so prodigal with the tricks and tropes of poetry, from gloriously overplayed alliteration, bunched bands on his belly bent above them, the bob tail beat on the globe, to synesthetic imagery and not forgetting the chunks of poetry quoted directly from the protagonist. Yeah. In fact, Redra Wong is based on Delaney's then wife, the poet Marilyn Hacker. And the poetry quoted as chapter epigraphs is all taken from her work. I think this helps balance the novel's star-spanning vistas, which with a distinctive star-spanning vistas, with a distinctive, intimate, emotionally intense, and turbulent quality. It is that emotional intensity that roots the larger scale politics in war, and war in the personal and bodily, the emotional truth. He probably meant is, right? And is the emotional truth of the whole that flashes out with what might otherwise be a slightly arid fascination with word games and anagrams. So, for example, both Samuel R. Delany himself and his friend Bob Folsom, the book's dedicatee, appear as characters, the two lovers of Wong. The former is anagrammatically rendered as Wells' Aaron Lyde, author of Empire Star and the Comet Joe Tales. As Ron says, those books were a lot of fun. The latter as Phobal Lums, a fictively refracted version of Hacker, Delaney, and Falso Strangler relationship. Delaney gives a detailed account of the dynamics of this triad in his superb 1988 memoir, The Motion of Light and Water. As for Rydra Wong, hers is a name playfully suggesting both right and wrong. Rydra Wong, appropriately enough for a character who is simultaneously a patriotic agent of the Alliance seeking to counter the effect of the language Babel-17 has on humans, and an unwitting traitor influenced by that very language. The book is often described as a dramatization of what specialists call linguistic relativity and non-linguists the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. The language actively shapes perception, mental processes. The novel is certainly rich with fascinating disquisitions on linguistics. Some of these are, shall we say, questionable. The notion, for instance, that the French have no word for and therefore no concept of war, which would surprise those Frenchmen I know. Or the thesis that Babel-17 language, lacking a word for I, must therefore preclude any self-critical process, cut out any awareness of a symbolic process at all. Which seems to me a little like the same people who lack a word to describe the little crease running from the upper lip to the nose simply do not possess a part of the body. But the book's linguistics doesn't have to be right. It has to be thought-provoking and it has to be beautiful. And it's both those things. One of my favorite moments in the book is certainly both those things. Rydra Wong's account of the language, of the spacefaring Cidibians who have the technological know-how for spaceflight but no words for house, home, or dwelling. The best you can do for house in Cidibian is an enormously... What? Yes. Alright. In Cidibian is an enormously lengthy periphrasis, but one Cidibian can lead through a solar conversion and electricity plant and then go describe it to another Cidibian who never saw it before, so that the second can build an exact duplicate even to the color the walls are painted. Where Each circuit is located, how big it is, and in short, completely describe the whole business. In 9 words, 9 very small words too. Wang's interlocutor can't believe it, and neither at first blush, can the reader. But once you get your head around this super B emblem of the alienness of aliens, not just physical differences, but a radically different conceptual model, you're starting to speak the language of his mind-blowing fiction. Adam Roberts. Alright, part 1. Vidra Wong. Alright, great. Here's the hub of ambiguity. Electric spectre splash across the street. Equivocation notes the shadowed features of boys were not boys. A quirk of darkness shrivels a full mouth to senility, or pares it to a razor edge, pours acid across an amber cheek, fingers a crotch, or smashes in the pelvic arch and wells a dark clot oozing on a chest dispelled with motion, or a flare of light that swells the lips and dribbles them with blood. They say the hustlers paint their lips with blood. They say the same crowd surges up the street and surges down again like driftwood borne tidewise ashore and sucked away with backwash, only to slap into the sand again, only to be jerked out and spun away. Driftwood, the narrow hips, the liquid eyes, the wide-flung shoulders and the rough-cast hands, the grey-faced jackals kneeling to evaporate the colors, disappear at break of day. When stragglers toward the west, river dogs meet young sailors ambling shipward on the street, from Prism and Lance. It's a port city. Yeah, fumes dust the sky. The general thought. Industrial gases flushed the evening with oranges, salmons purples with too much red. West, ascending and descending transports, shuttling cargoes to stellar centers and satellites lacerated the clouds. It's a rotten poor city too, thought the general, turning the corner by the garbage-strewn curb. Since the invasion, 6 ruinous embargoes for months apiece had strangled the city whose lifeline must pulse with interstellar commerce to survive. Sequestered, how could the city exist? 6 times in the 20 years he'd asked himself that. Answer, he couldn't. Panics, riots, burnings, twice cannibalism. The general looked from the silhouetted loading towers that jutted behind the rickety monorail to the grimy buildings. The streets were similar here, cluttered with transport workers, loaders, a few stellar men in green uniforms, and the whole of pale proper men and women who managed the intricate sprawl of customs operations. We are quiet now, intent on home or work, the general thought. Yet all these people have lived for 2 decades under the invasion. They've started during the embargoes, broken windows, looted, run screaming before fire hoses, torn flesh from a corpse's arm with calcified teeth. Who is this animal man? He asked himself the abstract question to blur the lines of memory. It was easier being general to ask about the animal man than about a woman who had sat in the middle of the sidewalk during the last embargo holding her skeletal baby by one leg. Of the 3 scrawny teenage girls who had attacked him on the street with razors, she had his through brown teeth, the bar metal glistening towards his chest. Come here, beefsteak. Come get me lunch meat. He had used karate. Or the blind man who had walked up the avenue, screaming. Pale and proper men and women now, who spoke softly, who always hesitated before they let an expression fix their faces with pale proper patriotic ideas. Work for victory over the invaders. Alone Star and Kip Ryak were great in Stellar Holiday, but Ronald Quar was the best serious actor around. They listened to highlights music, or did they listen, wondered the general, during those slow dances where no one touched. A position in customs was a good, secure job. Working directly in transport was probably more exciting and fun to watch in the movies. But really, such a strange people. Those with more intelligence and sophistication discussed Ryder's Wong's poetry. They spoke of the invasion often with some 100 phrases consecrated by 20 years repetition on newscasts, and in the papers they referred to the embargoes seldom and only by the one word. Take any of them, take any million. Who are they? What do they want? What would they say if given a chance to say anything? Ryder Wong has become this age's voice. The general recalled the glib line from a hyperbolic review. Paradoxical, a military leader with a military goal. He was going to meet Ryder Wong now. Rydra Wong now. Like that. Let me just sip some water here. Alright. I have yet to drink that coffee, by the way. It's standing right in front of me. The street lights came on and his image glazed on the plate glass window of the bar. That's right, I'm not wearing my uniform now. He saw a tall, muscular man with the authority of half a century in his craggy face. He was uncomfortable in the grey civilian suit. Till age 30, the physical impression he had left with people was big and bumbling. Afterwards, the change had coincided with the invasion. It was massive and authoritarian. Had Reader Wrong, Reader Wong, that's a hard name just to pronounce, right? Rydra Wong come to see him at Administrative Alliance headquarters, he would have felt secure, but he was in Civis, not in Stellarman Green. The bar was new to him, and she was the most famous port in 5 explored galaxies. For the first time in a long while he felt bumbling again. He went inside and whispered, "My God, she's beautiful," without even having to pick her from among the other women. "I didn't know she was so beautiful, not from the pictures." She turned to him as a figure in the mirror behind the counter caught sight of him and turned away, stood up from the stool, smiled. He walked forward, took her hand. The words, "Good evening, Miss Wong," tumbling on his tongue till he swallowed them unspoken, and now she was about to speak. She wore copper lipstick, and the pupils of her eyes were beaten discs of copper. "Babel-17," she said. "I haven't solved it yet. General Forrester." A knitted indigo dress and her hair like fast water at night spilling one shoulder, he said. "That doesn't really surprise us, Miss Wong." Surprise, he thought. She put her hand on the bar. She leaned back on the stool, hip moving knitted blue, and with each movement I am amazed, surprised, bewildered. Can I be this off guard, or can she really be that? But I've gotten further that you people at military have been able to. The gentle line of her mouth bowed with gentle laughter. "From what I've been led to expect of you, Miss Wong, that doesn't surprise me either." Who is she? He thought. He had asked the question of the abstract population. He had asked it of his own reflected image. He had asked it of her now, thinking no one else matters. But I must know about her. That's important. I have to know. First of all, General, she was saying, Babel-17 is a code. His mind skidded back to the subject and arrived tittering. Not a code, but I thought cryptography had at least established. He stopped, because he wasn't sure what cryptography had established, and because he needed another moment to haul himself down from the ledges of her high cheekbones, to retreat from the caves of her eyes. Tightening the muscle of his face, he marshaled, I guess, his thoughts to Babel-17. The invasion of Babel-17 might be one key to ending this 20 years scourge. "You mean we've just been trying to decipher a lot of nonsense? It's not a code," she repeated, "it's a language." The general frowned. "Well, whatever you call it, code or language, we still have to figure out what it says. As long as we don't understand it, we're a hell of a way from where we should be." The exhaustion and pressure of the last months hummed in his belly, a secret beast to strike the back on his tongue, harshening his words. Alright, let me sip a little of this sweet coffee mixed with creatine and guarana. Tastes just like coffee. Alright. Great. Her smile had left. Is this what I was? Hushing his words, yeah. Her smile had left, and both hands were on the counter. He wanted to retract the harshness. She said, "You're not directly connected with the cryptography department." The voice was even calming. He shook his head. "But let me tell you this, basically, General Forrester, there are 2 types of codes, ciphers and true codes. In the first, letters or symbols that stand for letters are shuffled and juggled according to a pattern. In the second, letters, words, or groups of words are replaced by other letters, symbols, or words. A code can be one type or the other, or a combination. But both have this in common. Once you find the key, You just plug it in and out come logical sentences. A language, however, has its own internal logic, its own grammar, its own way of putting thoughts together with words that span various spectra of meaning. There's no key you can plug in to unlock the exact meaning. Plug in to unlock the exact meaning, yeah. At best you can get a close approximation. Do you mean that Babel-17 decodes into some other language? Not at all. That's the first thing I checked. We can take a probability scan on various elements and see if they are congruent with other language patterns, even if these elements are in the wrong order. No, Babel-17 is a language itself, which we do not understand. I think General Forster tried to smile. What you are trying to tell me is that because it isn't a code, but rather an alien language, we might as well give up. If this were defeat, receiving it from her was almost relief. But she shook she shook her head. I'm afraid that's not what I'm saying at all. Unknown languages have been deciphered without translations. Linear B and Hittite, for example. Hittite. But if I'm to get further with Babel-17, I will have to know a great deal more. The general raised his eyebrows. What more do you need to know? We've given you all our samples. When we get more, we'll certainly. General, I have to know everything you know about Babel-17. Where you got it, when, under what circumstance, anything that might give me a clue to the subject matter. We release all the information that you give me 10 pages of double-spaced typewritten gabble with the codename Babel-17. He asked me what it meant. With just that, I can tell you. With more I might, it's that simple. If it were that simple, if it were only that simple, we would never have called you in either right or wrong. She said, if it were that simple. If it were only that simple, you would never have called me in about it, General Forster. He started for one absent moment, convinced she had read his mind, but of course she would know that, wouldn't she? General Forster, has your cryptography department even discovered its language? If they have, they haven't told me. I'm fairly sure they don't know. I've made a few structural inroads on the grammar. Have they done that? No. General, although they know a hell of a lot about codes, they know nothing to the nature of languages. I think it's of the nature, right? They know nothing of the nature of language. Sounds better. The sort of idiotic specialization is one of the reasons I haven't worked with them for the past 6 years. Wish he thought again. A security dossier had been handed him that morning, but he had passed it to his aide and merely noted later that it had been marked approved. He heard himself perhaps. If you could tell me a little about yourself, Miss Wong, I could speak more freely with you. Illogical, yet he'd spoken it with measured calm and surety. Was her expression quizzical? What do you want to know? What I already know is only this, your name, and that some time ago you worked for military cryptography. I know that even though you left when you were very young, you had enough of a reputation so that 6 years later the people who remember you said anonymously after they had struggled with Babel-17 for a month, send it to right or wrong. He paused. And you tell me you have gotten someplace with it, so they were right. Let's have drinks, she said. The bartender drifted forward, drifted back, leaving 2 small glasses of smoky green. She sipped, watching him. Her eyes, he thought, slant like astounded wings. Alright, took a small break there. A small banana break. Where was I? I guess, let's have drinks together. Let's have drinks, she said. The bartender drifted forward, drifted back, leaving 2 small glasses of smoky green. Okay, I read that. Yeah, she sat watching him. Her eyes, he thought, slant like astounded wings. I'm not from Earth, she said. My father was a communications engineer at Stellar Center X11b, just beyond Uranus. Uranus! My mother was a translator for the Court of Outer Worlds. Until I was 7, I was the spoiled brat of a Stellar Center. There weren't many children. We moved rock sign to Uranus XXV11. That is Uranus 27, right? In 52. By the time I was 12, I knew 7 Earth languages and could make myself understood in 5 extraterrestrial tongues. I pick up language like most people pick up the lyrics to popular songs. I lost both parents during the second embargo. You were on Uranus during the embargo. You know what happened? I know the outer planets were hit a lot harder than the inner. I don't know, but yes, they were. She drew a breath as memory surprised her. One drink isn't enough to make me talk about it, though. When I came out of the hospital, there was a chance I may have had brain damage. Brain damage? Malnutrition you know about. And neurosciatic plague. I know about the plague too. Anyway, I came to have to stay with an aunt and uncle here and receive neurotherapy. Only I didn't need it. And I don't know whether it was psychological or physiological, but I came out of the whole business with total verbal recall. I'd been bordering on it all my life, so it wasn't too odd. But I also had perfect pitch. Doesn't that usually go along with lightning calculation and eidetic memory? I can see how all of them would be of use to a cryptographer. I'm a good mathematician, but no lightning calculator. I test high on visual conception and spatial relations, dream in technicolor and all that. But the total recall is strictly verb. I had already begun writing. During the summer I got a job translating with the government and began to bone up on codes. In a little while I discovered that I had a certain knack. I'm not a good cryptographer. I don't have the patience to work that hard on anything written down that I didn't write myself. Neurotic as hell, that's another reason I gave it up for poetry. But the knack was sort of frightening somehow when I had too much work to do and somewhere else I really wanted to be and was scared my supervisor would start getting on my neck. Suddenly everything I knew about communication would come together in my head and it was easier to read the thing in front of me and say what it said than be that scared and tired and miserable. She glanced at her drink. Eventually the knack almost got to where I could control it. By then I was 19 and the reputation as the little girl who could crack anything. I guess it was knowing something about language that did it. Being more facile at recognizing patterns like distinguishing grammatical order from random rearrangement by feel, which is what I did with Babel-17. Babel-17. Why did you leave? I given you 2 reasons. The third is simply that when I mastered the knack, I wanted to use it for my own purpose. At 19, I quit the military and, well, got married and started writing seriously. 3 years later, my first book came out. She shrugged, smiled. For anything after that, read the poems, it's all there. And on the worlds of 5 galaxies now people delve your imagery and meaning for the answers to the riddles of language, love, and isolation. The 3 words jumped his sentence like vagabonds on a boxcar. She was before him and was talking. Here, divorced from the military, he felt desperately isolated and he was desperately in. No! That was impossible and ridiculous and too simple to explain what caused and posed behind his eyes, inside his hands. Another drink, automatic defense. But she will take it for automatic politeness, will she? The bartender came, laughed. The worlds of 5 galaxies, she repeated. That's so strange, I'm only 26. Her eyes fixed somewhere behind a mirror. She was only half through her first drink. By the time Keats was your age, he was dead. She shrugged. This is an odd epoch. It takes heroes very suddenly very young, then drops them as quickly. What? Right, so 5 minutes in, my computer just sent me a message like, wait a moment, and then click OK. I hope this is being recorded. I'm just going to know that after I end it by hitting the stop button. He nodded, recalling half a dozen singers, actors, even writers in their late teens or early 20s who had been named genius for a year, 2, 3, only to disappear. Her reputation was only a phenomenon of 3 years' duration. I'm bored of my time, she said. I'd like to transcend my times, but the times themselves have a good deal to do with who I am. Her hand retreated across the mahogany from her glass. You in military? It must be such the same. She raised her head. Have I given you what you want? He nodded. It was easier to lie with a gesture than a word. Good, now, General Forrester, what's Babel-17? He looked around for the bartender, but a glow brought his eyes back to her face. A glow brought his eyes back to her face. The glow was simply her smile, but from the corner of his eyes, he had actually mistaken it for a light. "Here," she said, pushing her second drink untouched to him. "I won't finish this." He took it. "Sit. The invasion, Miss Wong. It's got to be involved with the invasion." She leaned on one arm, listening with narrowing eyes. It started with a series of accents. Well, at first they seemed like accidents. Now we're sure it's sabotage. They've occurred all over the aliens. The Alliance regularly since December 68. Some on warships, some in Space Navy yards, usually involving the failure of some important equipment. Thrice explosions have caused the death of important officials. Several times these accidents have happened in industrial plants producing essential war products. What connects all these accidents other than that they touched on the war? With our economy working this way, it would be difficult for any major industrial accident not to affect the war. The thing that connects them all, Miss Young, is Babel-17. He watched her finish her drink and set the glass precisely on the wet circle. Just before, during, and immediately after each accident, the area is flooded with radio exchanges back and forth from indefinite sources. Most of them only have a carrying power of a couple of hundred yards. Couple of hundred yards, but there are occasional bursts through hypostatic channels that blanket a few light years. We have transcribed this stuff during the last three accidents and given it the working. Okay, so let me just make a comment here. How do they know that the occasional bursts through hypostatic channels have a blanket that blanket a few light years? How do you know that light years? I don't think that's possible. Yeah, funny. Right. So here it seems to start revealing its fiction nature. And I can be mistaken also. We have transcribed this stuff during the last three accidents and given it the working title Babel-17. Now, does that tell you anything you can use? Yes, there's a good chance you're receiving radio instructions from the sabotage back and forth between whatever is directing the accidents. But we can't find a thing. Exasperation struck. There's nothing but that blasted gobbledygook peeping away at double speed. Gobbledygook. What is this? Gobbledygook. I guess that's how it's pronounced. Gobbledygook piping away at double speed. Finally, someone noticed certain repetitions in the pattern that suggest a code. Cryptographers seemed to think it was good lead, but couldn't crack it for a month. So they called you. As he talked, he watched her think. And now she said, "General Forrester, I like the original monitors. I like the original monitors of these radio exchanges plus a full report, second by second, if it's available, of those accidents timed to the tapes. I don't know if you don't have such a report, make one during the next accident that occurs. If this radio garbage is a conversation, I have to be able to follow what's being talked about." You may not have noticed, but in the copy cryptography gave me, that's with a capitalized letter because it's an institution. So in the copy cryptography gave me, there was no distinction as to which voice was which. In short, what I'm working with now is a transcription of a highly technical exchange run together without punctuation or even word breaks. I can probably get you everything you want except the original recordings. You have to. I must make my own transcription carefully and on my own equipment. We'll make a new one to your specification. She shook her head. I have to do it myself, or I can't promise a thing. There's the whole problem of phonemic and allophonic distinctions. Your people didn't even realize it was a language, so it didn't occur to them. Now, he interrupted her. What sort of distinctions? You know the way some Orientals confuse the sounds of R and L when they speak a Western language? That's because R and L in many Eastern languages are allophones, that is, considered the same sound, written and even heard the same, just like the th at the beginning of they and at the beginning of theta. But those are not the same. That is considered the same sound, written and even heard the same. The TH at the beginning of they is not the same, maybe because I'm not a native speaker, but I don't think natives confuse the TH from they with the TH from theta. What's different about the sound of theta and they? Say them again and listen. One's voiced and the other's unvoiced. They are distinct. They are as distinct as V and F, only they are allophones, at least in British English. So Britishers are used to hearing them as though they were the same phoneme. Now, Americans, of course, have the minimal pair ether and either, where the voicing alone marks the semantic difference. Ether and either, yes. Ether and either. Oh, but you see the problem. A foreigner has transcribing a language he doesn't speak. He may come out with too many distinctions of sound or not enough. 5 minutes left in chapter. How do you propose to do it? By what I know about the sound systems of a lot of other languages and by feel. The neck again, she's my, I suppose. She waited for him to grant the proof. What wouldn't he have granted her? For a moment he had been distracted by her voice through subtleties of sound. Of course, Miss Wong, he said, you are our expert. Come to cryptography tomorrow and you can have access to whatever you need. Thank you, General Forster. I bring my official report in then. He's shooting the static beam of her smile. Must go now, he thought desperately. Oh, let me say something more. Fine, Miss Young. Fucking hell, I keep saying Miss Young. It's Miss Wong. I'll speak to you then. Something more, something. He wrenched his body away. I must turn from her. Say one thing more. Thank you. Be you. Love you. He walked to the door, his thoughts quieting. Who is she? Oh, the things that should have been said. I have been brusque, military, efficient, but the luxuriance of thought and word I would have given her. The door swung open, evening brushed blue fingers into his eyes. My God, he thought as coolness struck his face, all that inside me and she doesn't know. I didn't communicate a thing somewhere in the depths of the words. Not a thing. You're still safe, but stronger on the surface was the outrage at his own silence. Didn't communicate a thing at all. Rydra stood up, her hands on the edge of the counter, looking at the mirror. The bartender came to remove the glasses at her fingertips. As he reached for them, he frowned. Miss Wong, her face was fixed. Miss Wong, are you? Her knuckles were white, and as the bartender watched, the whiteness crept along her hands till they looked like shaking wax. Is there something wrong, Miss Wong? She snapped her face toward him. You notice? Her voice was a hoarse whisper, harsh, sarcastic, strained. She whirled from the bar and started toward the door. Stopped once to cough, then hurried on. Yeah. So, the book seems pretty good. Seems like it's worth the $3 I paid. And I guess that's it for today. Otherwise, it's going to be over 1 hour, right? It's going to be too long. I guess this is a good size. 2 hours is probably good as well, but it needs a more dynamical topic. All right. Have fun, guys. Good night.